Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows.
So, seeing the potential of prose for that type of story, what were then the steps that led to doing the story Reflected Glory and having that be in the anthology Superheroes? Was the story something kind of floating around for you for a while? Was it a bunch of ideas? Were you approached about the book or heard about the book and then started working on an idea for it? Like, where did that start?
It was edited by John Varley and Risha Meinhardt. Risha was also a literary agent, and she was Julie Schwartz's agent. He was the editor at DC Comics, of course. And I had written a lot for Julie over the years, but this was after he had stopped active editing and was more consulting than anything else. But he was up at DC, I was up at DC, Risha was up at DC, and we met in the hall and we're talking, and Julie says to her, "You ought to get him to write a story for that anthology you're doing with Varley." And Risha said, "Oh, okay, you want to write a short story for the anthology I'm editing with John Varley?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely." I had written 2 Spider-Man novels. To be fair, novels and short stories are also very different things. In my entire life, although I had, fooled around scribbling as a teenager, I wrote a lot of stories. I didn't finish very many of them, and the ones that I did were not very good. I had never really written this is for a real book. I mean, it was the publisher. This was Ace Books. This is big time publishing. But yes, it's like an actor. Can you ride a horse? Of course I can ride a horse. Then you go and learn to ride a horse. Same thing when I got approached to write a screenplay. Can you write a screenplay? Of course I can. Once I learned how.
Yeah.
So I just took the gig, and then it's like, oh crap, now I need a story. Fortunately, I had before me the real life example of the public relations agent in the story.
Jack Weiser?
Jack Weiser, yes. Jack Weiser is entirely based on a real person, a colleague and former friend.
Question: was the former at the time former, or former now, as of now former?
It was in the process of becoming former.
Okay.
The colleague part made things problematic. I had to maintain certain cordial relationships just because we were working together. But the fuck off, I don't want to see you again part still lay in the future. But it suddenly occurred to me that this guy, he can best be summed up by a story from years later. A bunch of us were walking through Manhattan, the streets of Manhattan, to Grand Central Station one night. And this guy said, words which most people who know him have come to dread, "Have I ever told you the story ... And one of the other guys piped up without hesitation and went, "Oh, is this the one where you're the hero?" That sums this guy up. Everything is about him. He is the guy who has to have the idea, who has to have the credit, whether he had the idea or not, and was more about form than substance. So, I had this guy to work with. He actually had a public relations background, so that even made it more convenient. And I kind of built the story from that. It's like, I know what he's done with comic book superheroes, but what would he do with a real superhero? And I kind of like, well, he'd make it about him. He'd build it into something for him. He'd rationalize like crazy, as Jack does in the story. No, I'm just, the steward of all this stuff. I don't tell. It's okay with Ultima. It should be okay with you, But again, it was all there. Kind of the guy was just there. And then, to be fair, there's a healthy dose of stealing from The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the punchline to that. When the legend becomes bigger than the truth, print the legend. So, that was what this guy decided to do. He would rather have the legend that he could control than the reality that was out of his hands.
Remember, if you like the clip, after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com where you can find more episodes of the show as well as a ton of other great shows.